to the Punchline. I'm your comic strip critic, and we're going back in time this week, folks. No. Make it stop! Make it stop! Hey, text! Come here! Would you quit tormenting me? The oldest comic I've looked at so far was Flash Gordon, and that was from the 1950s. We're going back even farther today, to the first half of the 1900s. No, not the Bumstead family, even older. Even older than that. This comic even started before Crazy Cat. We're looking at a comic that made its debut in 1908 and lasted for nearly 50 years. And sharp-eyed viewers may have already seen this comic in a few past episodes of The Punchline. These are all comedy strips that I care about. Just how many people are in the Wardle family? So just what is this comic that I've been hinting to you guys for the past few weeks? Well, it's an old classic called Toonerville Trolley. This single-panel comic ran from 1908 to 1955, and the cartoonist behind it was Fontaine Fox. At its peak, the strip ran in somewhere between 250 to 300 newspapers, and it was a very, very big deal. There were board games, there were toys, there were animated cartoons, there were even a series of short films, which I really wish I could find. And let me make something clear here. These were no small-time, obscure indie budget flicks. These short films were responsible for launching the career of Mickey Rooney. Yeah. Another interesting thing, at least about this particular collection, is that it's not organized by date like most comic collections are. Instead, it's organized by character, so the first 30 pages are about one character and the next 20 about another, and so on and so forth. Since it's not organized by date, and this book was made after Toonerville was done in newspapers, I'm not exactly sure when the strips in it are supposed to take place. But there are some references in here to General Patton and the New Deal, so I'm going to guess that a lot of these ran in the 30s and 40s. With that being said, let's wind back the clock and take a look. This is Toonerville Trolley. The skipper figured that if those boys tried to steal the car Halloween, a long rope tied to his foot would wake him up, and it did. Ah, the trolley skipper.
With Gilligan, the skipper too.
Not you, get out! I guess a bit of cultural context is needed to understand the basic setup of what Toonerville Trolley actually is. From what I can gather, the trolley was a bit like today's bus lines. It would shuttle people around Toonerville and make sure to drop them off at the train station on time to catch a train. Well, it would try, anyways. Since it's such a small town, the skipper can get a bit, well, careless at times. The skipper's eyesight sure ain't what it used to be. You're Easter Bunny! Or it can just make him outright lazy. When there are no passengers, the skipper often amuses himself with a sort of polo solitaire. This here tin can is gonna be a hard shot at the speed I'm riding. I like the artwork, for the most part. It's got a certain style to it that's detailed yet ridiculous and exaggerated. The landscapes look rough, raw, and untamed, which I consider appropriate for a comic that partially takes place in the Great Depression suburbs. The character design, well, let's put it this way. About half of Toonerville's population are fairly normal people, with exaggerated personalities. Mickey himself, McGuire, is the schoolyard bully. The terrible-tempered Mr. Bang has a terrible temper. And the Little Scorpions Clubhouse is a boys-only group that just gets together and has mischief and fun times together. A lot like the Little Rascals. The other half of Toonerville's population, well, take a look. Event of the week! Skyscraper Smith busted another streetlight. Aunt Eppie Hogg, the fattest woman in 3 counties. She used to use a card table, but that didn't keep the rain from beating in from the side. Suitcase Simpson has the largest feet in the township. He couldn't get his foot out of that bicycle pump, and he couldn't get his shoe off with the pump on it. Put another one on him and he'd be wearing a pair of pumps. Teeny Tompkins, the world's smallest football player. They always place kick teeny so he can flip it over the bar if it's short. Oh yeah. Toonerville's home to some of the most bizarre physical features I've seen since the Xavier Academy, and it is hilarious. I didn't even get to show you everybody. Seriously, what are they spiking Toonerville's water supply with?
But Professor Utonium accidentally added an extra ingredient to the concoction, Chemical X.
These characters admittedly don't have a ton of personality, but deep personalities are hard to show in panel comics and are largely unnecessary. These characters already have a defining trait, and the humor can just flow forth from that single characteristic. Sometimes they can even play off of each other, and fairly well too. Longstreet is the only person in town who can wipe a cinder out of Aunt Eppie's eye without hanging from the limb of a tree or something. There are a few other things about the panel that I want to point out that I really like. A very subtle yet effective one is the way we're looking at Toonerville. In most panel comics, or most comics in general really, we're looking at the characters and action directly from the side. In Toonerville, however, we're looking down at the scene from slightly up above. This adds a lot of visual depth to the scene and the chance for some good perspective shots and angles that we still don't often see in today's comics. Another oddity that I can't quite figure out is sometimes characters are shown speaking in speech bubbles, and other times the speech bubbles have quotation marks, and other times there are quotation marks but no speech bubble. I tried to figure this one out. I puzzled and puzzled till my puzzler was sore, and then my puzzler broke. It was just kind of a bizarre thing I noticed. Maybe Fontaine Fox changed the way he used characters' dialogue over time. Maybe certain dialogue options were used in certain situations. I don't know. I also like how everybody's accent is spelled out. It just adds so much personality to the way they all speak. It's great. Check this one out. A feller's folks are always the last to recognize his athletic ability. Just a scratch, but don't you understand it's gonna keep him from pitching for us tomorrow? Even after 80 some odd years, I think these still hold up pretty well. Look at all that activity in the panicking kids, the way the adults are leaning out of the window, all the little motion lines and over-exaggerated activity. There's just so much motion and kinetic energy packed into 4 square inches here. I love it all. But I realize that you might not. Maybe you're sitting there watching this video and you're saying to yourself, "Critic, this comic is terrible. There's not even a paper that runs this one anymore. Why are you looking at it if we can't find it?" Well, you know, funny thing about people is that sometimes we like things for reasons that other people might not see clearly at first. Some people might like Garfield for perfectly valid reasons, or they might not find Calvin and Hobbes all that entertaining. And I'll disagree with you, but you're welcome to have your own opinion. That's one of the great things about art and entertainment, is that it can mean so many different things to so many different people. I remember when I was about, I must have been 9 or 10, this was over a decade ago, almost 15 years ago. I went to my grandparents' house with my mom and my dad, and all the adults got to talking about stuff, and I was just a kid. I was bored. I didn't want to hear about, you know, Monica Lewinsky or impeachment or all that boring stuff. So I snuck away and I went down to the basement and I found this there. And I was reading it for a little while, and then my grandpa came down and he found me down there reading it, and he said, "Oh, Toonerville Trolley, I remember that book." And he sat down with me and we read it together, and he showed me some of his favorite characters. I remember he liked Suitcase Simpson, who had the largest feet in the whole township, and he loved Suitcase Simpson a lot for some reason. And when we were done reading it, he said, "You know, if you want to, you can take that book home with you." And so I've had it with me ever since. And whenever I read Toonerville Trolley, I think of my grandpa. He passed away last year. And now, whenever I read Toonerville Trolley, it means even more to me, because it's like a piece of him that's still with me, that I still get to enjoy and have with me all the time, like he's still there. And every week, you guys get to see what my grandpa left me. I keep it right here on my bookshelf, every single episode. So it's like there's a part of my grandpa that's still, you know, sitting there watching the show and still reading these comics and showing off Suitcase Simpson to me. And that's why I like Toonerville Trolley. I'm your comic strip critic, and I read the funny pages in the hope that someday they will be.